All right, day 20 of the 30-day vlog to vlog every day for 30 days. Share an idea every day. Just got back from the beach back in Bangkok now. It's super hot here. There's a lot of traffic today, but overall it's an easy trip back. Just had some awesome mushroom soup. I love mushrooms. That would be a good conversation to have actually, is about mushrooms and the effects of on our health. They're such an important part of health. The topic today will be on abundance and choices. Um, Basically, anything that becomes abundant loses its value because it's abundant. So, like, if you have $1, that dollar is very valuable. But if you have $1 million, a dollar is no longer valuable because money is abundant. If you have one nice meal once a month, then that one nice meal is like really valuable. But if you have a nice meal every single night, they're no longer valuable, they're no longer special. Um, if you have one friend in your entire town, that person's really, really valuable. But if you have 100 friends in a huge town, each individual friend is now less valuable because friends are abundant in that case. Basically, anything that becomes abundant loses its value. Now, how do you prevent things that are abundant from losing their value? I don't think you really can. All you can do is prevent things from becoming abundant. So, if I like having a nice Mexican dinner, I shouldn't eat Mexican dinner every single night because then I'll no longer enjoy Mexican dinner. Um, I think if you want to value, um, like the other thing that's an interesting one is that if time is abundant, it loses its value. So if you're spending time with somebody all the time, they become less valuable because you have unlimited time with them, or you have all the time in the world with them, all the time that we have. So the one way to value your interactions more with someone is to limit your time with them. It's very counterintuitive, but I think it's pretty much the only way to prevent things from becoming abundant and losing value. Now, there's this paradox of choice thing that happens where when you have more choices, you're less likely to make a choice, and when you do make a choice, you're less satisfied with that choice. That's a the paradox choice thing in psychology, which is well studied. Now, in a world of abundance and choices being unlimited or more abundant than ever before, basically we run into this problem of the paradox of choice where we're less likely to make a decision of doing something, or less likely to actually make a choice of what we're going to buy or what we're going to do or whatever it is. And then when we actually do make a choice, because there's all these other could haves or would haves that could have been, we're less satisfied with the choice we would make than if the choices weren't actually abundant and there was actually a finite amount of choices. So like if you have a restaurant and your menu has a bunch of shit on it, like a huge amount of options on it for you to choose from, people traditionally might think, oh, well, that's actually good because then the customer has all these options. But in reality, it leads to the paradox of choice problem. So keeping a really simple menu is probably the best way to make a customer actually happy, because they don't run into this paradox of choice problem where they make a choice and they think, oh, I could have made this other choice, and it makes it easier for them to make a choice in the first place. Now, the interesting thing about this whole idea of abundance and choices is that if you look at it from like a human relationship perspective, I think in 1790, 1 in every 20 Americans lived in an urban area. Now it's something like 8 out of every 10 Americans live in a city. And this trend isn't just true with America, it's true with like the entire world. Like people are going from living in rural areas to living in cities. Now, what does that do to our human connections and our human bonds in regards to abundance and choices? Well, if you live in a rural town, things are relatively scarce. People are relatively scarce. Having a girlfriend might be relatively scarce. Having a really good friend might be relatively scarce. But then when you move to a city, guess what? Now there's a hell of a lot more of everything. There's a hell of a lot more food options. There's a hell of a lot of more options to network with people and meet people. There's a hell of a lot more options of people to date. there's more of everything basically. And the result of that is that we run into the paradox of choice problem, and we run into the abundance problem, because if it's true that anything that becomes abundant loses its value, and modern cities basically create abundance of everything, then therefore we devalue almost everything in our lives that matter. And I don't think it's a deliberate thing. It's just the nature of what's happening. And I think it's totally the case. We see this with urbanization rates. You see that like our social bonds are actually getting weaker, and I don't think they're getting weaker because of social media and all these other things. I think they're actually getting weaker because urbanization rates are going through the roof, and urbanization has created abundant amounts of everything, including human connections, where you can go out and meet, like in Bangkok, there's 20 different social events every single night they can go out to and meet tons and tons of awesome people. But if you do that, you can only maintain so many relationships, and it devalues all the ones you already have. So yeah, it's like this issue, I think, is a big social experiment that's happening right now, with urbanization rates going through the roof, and just abundant amounts of everything in our lives. And I think it's important to be aware of this, these two real fundamental things, this abundance thing and the paradox of choice thing, because I think they do shape a huge amount of our decisions, and our behaviors and our social connections, and all this stuff. And we have to be conscious of it such that we can actually strategically come up with a better way of handling these situations, rather than just being, falling victim to the fact that we live in an abundant world of everything, and all of a sudden we devalue everything in our lives because everything's abundant. It's important to pay attention to that. So like one of the things I do is I really like getting massages here. They're abundant everywhere, and they're very good, and they're very reasonably priced here. But I deliberately not go for a massage every time I feel like it, because if I do it every time I feel like it, I'll go every single day, and then therefore a massage won't be something special. But if I limit a massage to like once a week or twice a week, then all of a sudden every time I go, it's like a really special thing. And I do the same thing with food. If I really like something, I don't just eat a lot of it. I try to limit it. Or going for a nice dinner with your girlfriend. You can do that every single day, but if you kind of make it special once a week or once a month, then it becomes a little bit more valuable. And then with your social interactions, I think if you keep them more limited, I mean, it's important to stay socially active, but if you spend too much time with any one person, it lowers you devalue them. So I think it's important to just keep that stuff in mind. And who am I to say maybe I could be wrong about all of this? It's just something I've thought about that um, I've always found kind of interesting, with urbanization rates going through the roof and abundant amounts of everything in the world, whether it's material stuff or consumption or just wealth. There's like more of everything in the world today. More people, more food, more money, more connections, more technology, more of everything. So yeah, just an interesting thought for today. I'll leave it at that. That'll be it for day 20. See you tomorrow for day 21.